Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with veteran jazz singer Andy James. We caught up with her to talk about a wonderful life well lived in the jazz world that has literally taken her all over the globe. She delves into her newest 2021 CD Tu Amor and hope for the future, along with a little bit more. Enjoy the story.
Thanks for taking a minute out.
Love to. How's your day been? Good? Yep.
Oh, it's good. We're getting through it okay. Everything's starting to get into full bloom, and we're seeing some colors on the horizon, so it's cool.
Oh, great.
How you holding up?
Good. Yeah, everything's coming together now.
Good deal.
You know, everyone's been getting their shots, and
I think the world's starting to wake up a little bit, so it's nice.
Well, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a long time. So
It has.
Man,
I've been trying to keep busy with all the guys, and we've been doing sessions throughout COVID. Carefully, obviously, but we've been doing them. Recording a lot of things.
Well, I guess that leads into my first question here is, you have album, you have material that's coming out during a pandemic, during a very strange time where there's no live music.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about that?
Well, I really thought it was time for sort of like a really feel-good jazz album, and that's why I did this Jazz Latin album. I got together with, Alex Acuna, she was a great friend of mine, and we thought it'd be a great time to do it, when everyone needs a bit of fun and, all that sort of thing, and then we were just talking, and then we were actually in Capitol recording another album with John Patitucci and Vinnie Colaiuta on something else we were doing, and I was talking to Bill and Alex, and then we started talking about songs. And then I made Bill go home that night and write the scores for this Tu Amor album. He did it quick. He's really good that way. He can really do them quickly. Bill Cunliffe?
Absolutely, yeah. Wonderful.
So I make him write scores really quickly. I'm always in trouble with him, always. And then he brought them back the next day at Capitol, and we all started putting them together, and I called around, and we had a lot of friends come in, to come in and do it. If you want specifics on players, I think they're probably on the album covers.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I guess what I'd like to know too is, what do you want the listener to get from Tu Amor? How do you want them to feel about this artistic production?
Well, the thing with this album is I didn't want to be too strict with it. I wanted it to be fun. I wanted everyone to dance along. And the funny thing is that we got a critique back from Turkey, a really fabulous critique back on the whole album, saying it was the best dance jazz Latin album they've heard in 2 decades. And I was really thrilled with that, because it was exactly what I was trying to do. Make a feel-good sort of album, and I tried to be lighthearted with it and not sing too complicated on it, and so everyone could sing along and dance with it. Because of COVID, really, it was time for that.
Yeah, I think that's the key to all of this, is that we all need some good-hearted music, and we need to move. And I guess that's my next question to you is, how did the seeds of jazz get into you? How did you get into flamenco, and how did you get into jazz singing?
Well, the way I did that was my mum. My mum used to have this fabulous... She was a jazz singer in Australia, Australasia, around that area. And she used to have this album collection of Sarah Vaughan and Ella and, all those greats. And, of course, I was a little girl in the kitchen listening every day, singing along, and she'd help me with it, and we'd be singing and singing. And I got so much influence from that. It was, a great influence on me, growing up in a kitchen full of music like that. There was always some art. Yeah, well, it really was. I found it great. And of course, oh gosh, there's so many. A lot of them came through the flamenco dancing around Europe, because one of my members that used to be in our group was Stefan Grappelli, and he would help me a lot with the jazz. And he was a very interesting man, and he always would say, sing with your heart, sing with feeling, and he'd play his violin, and we would sort of run away from our flamenco gigs to do jazz clubs, late through the night. And so he gave me a very good experience in getting a lot better at jazz.
Yeah.
He was a fun guy.
Yeah. What was the first live jazz show you ever saw that made you think that's something that you want to do with your life?
Oh, it was about, I'd say it was around 7. And I remember Ella Fitzgerald. She came out. We were traveling. My dad was a downhill ski racer, champion racer, and so sometimes he'd drag us to the tournaments, and I got to see Ella in Paris. I loved that. Ella Fitzgerald really set me going. I loved the way she sang, and from that moment I really wanted to be a jazz singer. It's just the only problem I had was the flamenco kept getting in the way of the jazz, because my dad was, an absolute nut on flamenco. He loved it so much, so he had to make me do it. So he sent me to classes when I was I think I was 6, and he made me do it. Then he sent me to Spain to study and then dance professionally, and I was always singing jazz at the same time. So we had this battle royal between my mum and my dad, what I was doing. Well, luckily I was sort of good at both, so it made it easier.
Yeah. Well, other than your parents, who would you consider mentors? Earlier, I was on some bills with Ella, and that sort of really, we had mixed shows where I was actually dancing and she was singing around. It was actually in Munich. She would, I'd be singing in the backstage, and then go on and dance. She'd see me dance, and then she'd hear me sing, and she loved it. And then she'd, tell me to give me a little bit of advice. And these shows sort of ran around, and we'd bump into her, once every 6 months or so. And she'd tell me more and keep trying to get me to sing, And I'd always be singing in clubs around Europe anyway. And I think she's been an enormous influence on me. And then later on, when I thought I should stop dancing, I was getting a little older, you can do it for so long, and then you start to, slow down. And then I was at a party in Las Vegas, because I lived between Las Vegas and Los Angeles. And Edie Gourmet was at it, because she was my neighbor. And I'd often see her, and we'd be in the same nightclubs, and her with Steve, and she used to make me sing all the time. And then she kept saying, "Why don't you go back to it? Why don't you go back to it full time?" So I think that was a really big sway on getting me back to being a full-time jazz singer. She'd make me sing songs like Doodlin', and she loved that. She was always thinking she would have loved to have sang more jazz, but wasn't really allowed. Wow.
She always had to sing the popular stuff and sing in Spanish, and she wasn't, because that was her market. But she loved jazz, and she wanted to do it. But, and Steve would be very encouraging. But unfortunately, she was going to sort of present me, but she got cancer and, she died. So that sort of stopped that. And then I was still mixing dancing and jazz singing up, mainly because probably, she passed, and then that opportunity sort of went by. I went back to Europe. And I think that was, a really big thing, and why I didn't go back a couple of years earlier, because of her passing. And then Steve became a recluse, because he was old, and so he didn't want to do anything. So I think, that was a little hold up in my life at that stage, when I was determined to come fully back into jazz singing.
Well, you kind of touched on with this story here, but with other legends and luminaries and big names that you've been around, what did you learn? What did you learn from those esteemed players that in turn helped you in your career?
I think because I got to work with a lot of them through the flamenco as well, because a lot of jazz artists would come and perform with all the flamenco artists. I used to work with Paco de Lucia, don't know if you remember him, the guitarist.
Yes,
Did you
absolutely.
ever know him?
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
he was a big influence too. And, I was always a little sad that I couldn't work with Chick because he used to work with Chick and I used to work with Paco, but it never crossed paths where we could actually, go and do it together, which I would have loved because, we both had the Latin and the jazz influence, and those players really knew everything about it, especially, Paco, but Chick was great at it too. We go to performances where Paco dragged me along and they'd be up there on stage and it was everything I could do not to jump up there and sing and dance with them. It was hard not to. But you can't do that in someone else's gig, can you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. You can't really, even though you want to. So many people came in, John McLaughlin, everyone would come in and perform. Yeah. John Williams, there were so many people that would come in. Even like these last 4 years when I've been doing it, John Patitucci has been a big influence on me, to be honest. He's given me a lot of pointers about how to express myself when I'm singing, phrasing, and, which I think I followed. I think he's been quite a big influence, and I would call him a luminary, wouldn't you?
Oh, without a doubt. Absolutely.
Yeah, and then Vinny Colaiuta has been fabulous too, but he was very good on getting me to not be so strict with my timing. With flamenco artists, you've got to be a lot more strict with the way you perform. You've got to be more in time and sort of really be on the offbeat of the music instead of on the beat. So he made me a lot more relaxed that way. I love that. And in turn, I've sort of shown that to a young singer named Tommy Ward. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he's a very lovely singer, a find of Quincy Jones. And we've been doing a few things, and I've been showing him some things, and he seems to be coming along greatly. What
do you like the best about being a professional singer?
It's the people. It's the audiences. I love the way they look. The look in their eyes, if they're liking what you're doing, that's such a buzz. I love that. I suppose also the traveling's fun. Getting to travel everywhere is great. I think I've performed in 100 countries. That's fun.
Yeah, well, and with all of this world shutdown...
Yeah, that's been a no-no.
Yeah, I mean...
We've done some virtual stuff, a few virtual gigs that everyone's doing, which is not the same. That audience is everything. You just see them, they're bars, especially if you're singing a ballad. If you can sing a ballad and they all shut up, now that's great. I love doing that. Because to be honest, ballads is sort of my thing. I love ballads. I think I got that because of Ella, the way she would sing a ballad, and she'd always say it's the hardest thing to do, in her opinion. Yeah. She was fabulous at all her scatting and everything, but she would always say, if you can sing a ballad, you can sing anything. Yeah. And, the funny thing is that we were doing a gig with Patitucci and John Beasley, and the thing is they hadn't heard me sing that many ballads, and then we were doing ballads, and they really loved it. So there's something about ballads that everyone seems to think is hard. And that's what I like doing, so hey. Right. Yeah, it's a match. After all of these years and miles and countries you've been through, what if you have a dream tonight, you run into your younger self before you start this journey, and you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be? Don't waste time. I think. Don't waste time. I think that's the biggest thing because there's not as much as everyone thinks. I don't know if you know what I mean. It's like, how everyone wastes so much time on things you think are important, but they're not. Yeah. I think that would be the main thing. Do not waste any time. Yeah, I agree. It would have made me a better singer. Why do you love jazz? Let me think. It's just from when I was a kid in the kitchen, from starting from my mother and all the opportunities she gave me, seeing all these great artists as I grew up. It just was in me. I was something I had to do. It wasn't, I didn't think I had a choice. I had to do it. It made me feel good. It makes me me. If I wasn't doing it, I wouldn't be me.
You know, speaking of this pandemic and the return and everything kind of coming back in, when we do actually get back to live music, you're on stage, I'm in the crowd. What do you hope we realize about live music? What do you hope we really hold on to about the power of live music when we get back?
How fantastic it was and is. You know, everyone wants to watch it on their phone. They don't realize what a live gig is. How the feeling, just the soul you get from performing, or even sitting in an audience when someone's great up on stage. I miss that. I mean, you can look on your phone, you can see all these fabulous gigs, but it's not the same. Nothing's the same as a live gig.
Yeah.
You know, you get such a buzz, you feel good. You know, if you see a great artist, then, you know, well, hopefully I've got no hairs on my legs, but if there's anything there, they stand up on end, you know.
Yeah.
Hopefully I got them.
Yeah, right. So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're the one living your life. Who do you think you are?
Whoa, that's a hard one to answer, isn't it?
Yeah.
I suppose I'm just a honest, hard-working girl that tries to do her best. That's it. I can't, you know, I tried to sing the best I can. I tried to dance the best I could. Always trying to improve, but, you know, we do get a lot, you know, knocks as you go. Not everyone's going to like you for whatever reason. As long as you like yourself, then it should be fine. My family were often against it. They wanted me to be, you know, a lawyer or a doctor or, you know, my other family, not my parents. My parents loved the arts. But everyone else, you know, my siblings, they didn't want me to do it. But I did.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to let them stop me. Luckily, I had my dad who was an absolute nut on it all.
Yeah.
He would be singing in the streets. He'd be singing. He was a downhill racer, so he'd be singing my songs in the championships, skiing down the mountain. He'd often be heard singing them. You know, if I was doing some silly old song like Misty or something, he'd be singing it down. And I don't know how he had time to even coordinate it, but somehow he would be singing. So that was
wonderful.
a buzz. Here it's listening to him do that. Great.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great answer. That's quite a way to... Andy, thank you for taking some time out to talk about the new album and your life and music. Good luck with
wonderful.
the album.
Thank you. Excellent. Bye.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview. We give you a bit of insight into the finest singers in L.A., New York, Las Vegas, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Andy for her time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.